the first thing I want to say is, thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you to the moderators who will be working with me today. And a big thank you to these coaches here who are going to give us some amazing insights and a lot of wisdom and just a lot of things we could take into our. But my name is Adu-Poku, and I'm the founder of the Reach series. And my business basically revolves around, helping people see themselves outside of their sports and outside of their careers. And especially when I look back on my varsity career, I've really started to take a step back and realize how much I could appreciate basketball, not just for, my time on the court, but just all the things I take off of it. And I know a lot of people really enjoyed Hooper's Talk just because of the fact that, it gave people the time to get together and have some sense of community. And, even when I'm thinking about Coaches Talk and this event we're having today, I really believe coaches are, more than just people who, get on you from the sidelines, give motivational speeches at the locker room, or someone you just, shake their hand once, say good game, and, go back to the bus. They're people just like you and me. They're, people with their own stresses, their own problems, just really trying to find ways to get through the day and find purpose and motivation in their lives. And I'm one who really believes that everyone has a, unique, powerful, yet profoundly relatable story to tell. And I think with these panelists today, we'll show you just that. And even if I'm thinking about all of you here, coming from different time zones, I'm seeing Burlington now. I think someone tuned in all the way from Victoria, different circumstances. I can only respect the fact that you're all taking time out of your day, not just to, come together as a community in these times, but to just hear a lot of these amazing insights. So you all have my utmost respect. And I know a lot of us are really used to Zoom calls. I really just wanted to make this one a bit, I kind of didn't want to make it a webinar because I know when I'm doing webinars, I kind of just, lay back in bed, like I'm not really tuned in. I'm not really focused, just knowing I'm not really going to have anything on me. So I feel like this is slightly more interactive. I just ask that you stay muted, but I'm just going to get into some housekeeping rules, just so we could really kind of get into things. So one thing I ask is just that, people stay muted throughout the process, of course, although you're encouraged to turn on your video. Any profanity or any kind of disrespectful dialogue will not be tolerated here because it is a safe space. Panelists and moderators are comfortable with you like messaging them privately in the chat if there's anything, you might want to talk about and everything. And on top of that, the last section of this event will be dedicated towards Q&A for any specific questions people have. And if you're not comfortable asking these questions, you can message, I believe it is Brandon. Just message Brandon privately and he will ask the questions on your behalf. But if you have specific questions, I ask that you save them till the end, just so, we can keep track of everything. For some of the questions and topics, they'll be geared towards two people, but everyone will have the time to touch on the topic just due to time constraints, because these are all amazing panelists we have who can give us days worth of wisdom, but we only got this window, so we gotta make the most of it. And honestly, I've talked a lot, so now that I've gotten a lot of that away, I think it's really time to get into things. And I'm just gonna give it away for Tristan and Brandon to really get into some introductions.
First and foremost, I just like to say who I am basically. Came from Toronto, just like Kwesi, and I'm just really thankful for him to allow me this opportunity to really just help him out with this event because I see the vision and I really enjoy it. And it's something that I'm really happy to run with him today. So I'll pass it off to Tristan so he can next introduce himself.
So sorry, I wasn't letting me unmute right quick, but we're good now. Thanks, Brando. I'm Tristan Lindo, third-year men's basketball player as well. Communication studies. And just for some background, like I'm from Ajax, came out to Hamilton to McMaster. And like Brando, I wanted to really help Kwesi with his initiatives. And yeah, really just help trailblaze a path for young hoopers like us. So yeah. And I guess from now we could pass on to one of the coaches and they could give us a little icebreaker about themselves, their name, their school, and a brief summary of like their journey or like, their background. So whoever wants to go first can take a hit at it.
I'll go ahead. My name is Sean Swords. I'm the head coach at Laurentian University. I'm actually originally from Ottawa. I attended Laurentian University for school and played basketball there for 5 years. That's what I got for you. Pass it off as Tatum likes to call me a point forward, so I'll pass it on to PT.
Thanks, Sean. Patrick Tatum, head coach at McMaster University. Really proud of Kwesi, Brando, Tristan, three of my guys. Just kind of really being leaders and just trying to do something outside of the box, which is great. And I'm just fortunate to just really just support and help out Kwasi with this Hoopers Talk initiative. I think it's a really good platform for not just us coaches to talk right now, but even the players hoop chat that they had not too long ago, which was really good too. So with that being said, look forward to tonight, and I'm going to pass it off to Justin.
Hey everyone, Justin Serres, head coach at Wilfrid Laurier University. A little bit about me, grew up in France, moved to Canada when I was 20. Went to Laurentian, played for Coach Swords my last 2 years of university, and went to Ottawa for a master and became an assistant coach there, and now been at Laurier for 5 years already, so going pretty fast.
I'll go next. Charles Kissy, I am the head coach and general manager of the Guelph Nighthawks in the CEBL. Coached at Brock, coached with the Raptors 905, went to McMaster University and played there, and grew up in Toronto. And thank you, gentlemen, for putting this on and for having me on.
Guess I will lead myself, Taffy Charles. I'm head coach of Carleton University men's basketball team. From Ottawa, played at Carleton. Proud of being from Ottawa and proud of representing Carleton. I've been at the school in some capacity, coaching or playing basketball since 1990. So I guess that means I'm pretty old. That's all I have to say.
I think that's exactly what it means, Taffy.
Well, thank you, coaches, for all your input. I'm speaking a little bit about yourselves. We'll get into more of that later. But before we get to the next point, I just want to say to everyone, I know the panel's focused on basketball, but I feel like before we get into it, I really just want to talk about like the systemic racism that's been happening lately. And we know that many organizations are trying to express their solidarity through Black History Month that's coming up soon. And so I know there's a strong distrust with a lot of things that people are doing because a lot of it is performative behavior. I just want to ask all the coaches, how do you think that we can promote sustainable change that will be here for the coming future, forever? You know what I mean? So I just want to ask you that. What do you guys think?
I can jump on that. I think, again, I think, just quite simply, just think allies. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'd say. I mean, I think when everything all popped off in the summer, a lot of minorities were looking for, we're pretty familiar with the issues. So it's not, and we've always been familiar with the issues. I think what's happened differently now is just everybody else and non-minorities being aware of the issues and acting as allies for us. I think that's probably been the biggest change, and continue to do that. And I've really been encouraged, at least in Ottawa. We've done some things an organization that we've been working on since June, called Athletes Combating Racism. And again, if you look at the mix up of that, it's half of us are minorities and half of us aren't. So and we've been going pretty strong. So I think that's probably one of the things I'd say is just, again, having allies within this to advance the cause, and really pleased with how it's been going so far.
I'll add one thing, and I could probably say a million things, but I would say policy. We need to be reviewing, some of our policies or structures, whether we want to, whether it's scholarships, admissions, however we look at it from a post-secondary situation. And then, within our athletic departments, like what are our policies that are specific to, anti-racism, for example. I think, we have to really do a hard look and start doing some audits as far as our policies. And that's one of many things, but I'll leave it at that.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to interject very quick. Coach Kissy, I believe you said you started an organization revolving around equity and finding ways to help, integrate this policy. So could you, if you feel comfortable, would you want to speak on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, we started Equity Connections, which is, as Taffy sort of alluded, I think I'll speak for myself as a Black male, like I know the issues, sort of going through a 2-year-long review for me is not quite helpful because there's things that can be done now. And so for me, throughout the pandemic, one of the things that I started beyond a podcast, talking about some of the issues of systemic racism throughout various segments in our society, including education, sport, media, was starting this company and working with Professor Armstrong from Brock, and Sherilyn Scobie, who's a principal and educator in the TDSB, and trying to educate. We're working with an athletic department in this country as we speak. We're working with the police service. We have different partners that we're working with to try and help change and educate and sort of transform not only policies, but minds and habits and behavior. So, I just think it's, one thing to talk about, it's another thing to do something about it. And I think that's the place I know certainly that I'm at and many people are at. I think we have to move beyond the conversation, which is a very important place to begin, by the way. But personally, I was ready to move beyond the conversation and start doing the work.
Definitely add to what obviously every university, every organization is well aware of what is now happened for, not lately, for a long time. One thing we started here when I got the job was I guess a game around culture and embracing your culture, not just from an ethnicity point of view, but more of a general type of things. And I know PT also talked to me before COVID. He wanted to do a game, a Black History Month game, kind of like what we do with Shoot the Cure and all of those great events we have at the OUA. So I think there is quite a few events we could do, but on the daily basis as coaches, the biggest thing you can do, not just for university coaches, but club coaches and high school coaches, prep school coaches, is really impacting the kids you have in your team. Me coming from such a diverse background, French, North Africa, West Africa, moved to Canada, experienced so many different people around me over the years. I take pride in having a diverse team and helping them, I guess, play together, cohabit together, embrace each other like family. I think it's, also very impactful, and it's not something we should minimize as coaches. And I think once we kind of push that forward with some of the events, and I'm happy that now every university or most of university are now putting a committee together to kind of talk about it and put something on paper, like Coach Schwartz was talking before we got on. Is like, nothing's going to change if we don't put something, on paper, so that it's not legit, but it's something that we actually, move forward every year. So I think there is a lot of good stuff happening, and I think we should definitely keep riding the wave before people kind of tune out and go back to the same old type of thing.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, right? I think for myself, it would just be realizing, growing up, the privilege that I was raised with. I don't think I ever really thought about that very much, and that kind of brought it to the forefront lately. And really just seeing the unconscious biases that I brought to the table as well. That, again, you never really reflect on it until the pandemic stopped and you think about it. I think another thing I really added in was that it's not okay to just not be a racist myself, but really be anti-racist and really be, more vocal with that and really trying to do things to create it and spread that so there's more people like that. And then what Justin was just touching on is, and Charles kind of mentioned it himself, we need to get things down on paper, because it's a moment right now where people want to say the right things and want to be surrounded by the right things, but are they going to put them down on policy and for universities specifically to have things written down where there's a financial payment to do things, to actually execute the things that they're talking about. And I think that needs to be ongoing, and it's not going to be done overnight, but there's some major things that can be done quickly that can start to, you know, make this snowball into real positive change and keep that ball rolling.
Perfect. I think to answer the question, Tristan, I think everybody just kind of touched on every single point, which is essentially it's this systemic deal is institutionalized. It's embedded in our institutions, and like, I mean, Charles touched on it pretty much right out the gate with policies. Like, policies have to change. They have to be looked over, reformatted, everything. Like, everything has to be changed, but it's got to start at the university, and then it's got to work its way all the way down to athletics and then to each coach. And I mean, Taffy talked about allies. Justin talked about embracing your kids once you do have that diverse team and trying to be impactful with them. And then obviously just really kind of understanding and knowing the biases. So, I mean, it's like, just tried to sum up everything that everybody has already said, but it's pretty much perfect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you guys said. Couldn't have said it better. You guys touched on everything. I guess it just comes down to change as a whole. We have to do a lot of changing for sure as a society. So yeah, I agree with what you guys said. And with that said, Kwesi, I'm gonna give it off to you.
Yeah, I just want to, Mel made a really good point as well. If any of you want to check the chat function, he's definitely right about, you know, talking about taking that time and the active effort. So if any of you want to see a bit more wisdom, he was also on Hooper's Talk. He was one of our featured panelists. Shout out. I gotta shout him out, you know. But I guess we'll get right into it. The first question I'm gonna ask is just about the pandemic. For all of you, I'm just wondering, you know, I guess we'll start with Coach Suresh, and then we'll kind of like call each other out and work our way around. But, you know, how have you been handling the changes this pandemic has brought? And not just to you personally, but also to your team dynamic. You know, and for things you might have learned or overcame, you know, what possible advice do you have for others trying to go through the same thing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak for all of my players, obviously, but what we've tried to do is, like everybody that I think we saw, was taking a little bit from, you know, what certain organizations, certain teams, certain, you know, entity were doing, and trying to do a lot of more stuff creative. I think, you know, in terms of keeping them engaged with their love of the game. So could be guest speakers. We had plenty of guest speaking appearances on our Zooms and stuff like that. A little bit more video stuff. I guess, you know, the whole Zoom workouts and all of that stuff. So we tried to be as creative as possible, but not gonna lie, it's been now close to a year. So I think we're all kind of running out of ideas of trying to be creative right now. But I think that piece, there's a lot of like stuff that we have implemented that was actually very beneficial for our team. Me personally, as a coach, I looked at the whole, you know, whole spectrum of everything that we're doing in terms of, you know, communication, events, social media, everything, scouting, recruiting, all of that stuff. Trying to take the time to actually analyze it with my staff, give all of my staff a little projects to work on, and trying to reinvent ourselves so that when we're back in real life, I guess, we're better than where we were when we left off. So it's really just trying to use that time as time to, I guess, take it in, reflect on what you have done well, what you have not so well, and trying to better yourself. So when you're back on the court, you can, you know, you can be a better version of where you were before that. And, you know, from nutrition standpoint to meditation to books to a lot of stuff personally I've done that I didn't really take the time to do before. And it keeps me way more healthy physically and mentally as well. So again, it's a big knock on everybody's, but I think it's a lot of opportunities for everybody to be creative, and that's the only way we can get through it. And that's kind of the message I try to give to my players and my families and stuff like that. And I hope, you know, we all can come back stronger, better, but we'll see.
That's a really great point, especially when I think about the fact that we're all in this together in a sense, you know, and I feel like right now in a non-pandemic world, we'd all be in a season, we might not even have this space because we're all just so focused on winning, you know? So now we could just really take the time to think, what are things we haven't addressed before that we could just focus on so we're even more ready to go? So that's a very great point.
Yeah.
I guess for any coach who wants to go next.
Yeah, I think, again, I think, yeah, for coaches, it's been quite a challenge. I mean, it's, we're coaching's an interesting, being a head coach is, being an assistant for a number of years and being a head coach, it's definitely different moving one seat over. There's no question about that. I mean, it's amazing how you're expected to know all the answers as a head coach. And as assistant coach, it was just like, okay, I could give you my suggestion, but having answers, especially around this time with the pandemic, it's been quite difficult on leaders, to be honest with you. I always want to shout out to the leaders as well, because nobody asked them how they're doing, to be honest with you. It's like, it's been tough. Like, it's, trying to motivate, trying to keep guys together, and, and especially for you guys, the young guys, I mean, with PT trying to get you guys, keep you guys all on the right track, keep you guys all in a good place, try to keep you guys all somewhat engaged. It's and the coaches wake up every day thinking about this. We wake up every day thinking about something that the reality is we used to think about, okay, how are we going to get some wins? How are we going to get some players? How are we going to get some things that, we know about? And now trying to think about how do we think about how do we motivate some other guys? And so it's been a hell of a challenge. And I do empathize with a lot of people, but again, I think trying to make sure everybody understands and how do we use this time wisely. I think that's probably the biggest thing. How do you not waste time? How do you reinvent yourself, and how do you come out of this even better than you were before? I think that's probably it. And we talk about that with our players all the time. How do you get better? Like, there's people doing stuff, and the people who are creative, and to be honest with you, being older, this reminds me of when we didn't have any TVs or anything, like, 6 stations and stuff, right? Like, and no internet, like, you'd have to figure things out. And now we've been put back in that world where you have to figure things out, like, oh, I'm bored. What am I going to do? How do I be creative? There's lots of growth for people to do these things. And, definitely one of our teaching points is who's going to come out of this, with being better, and somebody's doing something, somebody's being creative, somebody's shooting outside with the ball and it's -20. Somebody's doing that. Somebody's training, doing some old school training. Somebody's doing that. They will be. And look forward and try not to, being older, we know that it's going to be a new day, and we will get back to normal. Just because we have that wisdom, it's hard for young guys to see that. So how do we guide them to that?
And from my age, I definitely don't see a lot of that. That's why we have people like you to help guide us and show us the way.
I'll build on that a little bit. Perspective. I think for me, like, I'm not coaching at the university anymore, and was fortunate enough to coach this summer in the summer series. And then things sort of die as you're sort of building a team. But perspective, I keep saying that's sort of the number one thing that sort of helped me stay focused or level-headed through this time, because you've had an opportunity now, as Taffy said, about not wasting time, but to use your time effectively and reflect and think about what's important, and think about where you're at, your coaching, your personal life, all of those different areas. You've had some time to reflect it and do that. So with that perspective of being sort of supportive and sort of having it for myself, thinking about communication, like how important it's been in the last year to be better at it, to be better at, how we communicate with everyone, whether it's our team, whether it's, our colleagues, whether our family, whatever it is, on both ends of like the listening and communicating. And then the last piece for me has been compassion. I was trying to figure out, just understanding that everyone's going through it together, but we're all also in different places. So, I tend to think that, I've been fortunate. I have 2 amazing, young kids that sort of tie up your time, and then, you know, you're working. And in this time, I started a podcast, and I've been following other passions and doing things to sort of keep myself, I wouldn't say doing them to keep myself busy, but following passions because I actually have the time to do it. I'm not on a plane now every other day. I'm not, you know, doing other things. So, you know, finding other passions has been such a big piece. Doing things with compassion and communication has been a huge piece. And then having perspective at all moments when you're frustrated and things are not going the way you want them to, or you've been at home forever or whatever it might be, you know, just realizing that, you know, one, you're going to get through it because we are, right? And two, that, you know, I guess it's my mom that put this in me, that, you know, it could always sort of be worse. And so how do you make the most of the situation you're in, or try to improve it if you don't like it? I always used to say to our team, you know, if you don't like losing, win, you know, so find a way to keep pushing forward and keep progressing.
There's some very wise words to go by for sure, because as we've all seen this year, and I think someone alluded to it in the comments, you know, we've all been hit with adversity in different ways, but at the end of the day, you know, how are we going to keep finding ways to push? So that's a very great point. And
I would add a bit on that, saying that it's for coaches, we're usually used to controlling situations and trying to control all situations that could arise in a game. And now it's happening in life where you actually realize, no, you actually don't have control, which coaches find out every Friday and Saturday when the teams aren't doing exactly what you want them to do, that we're kind of getting slapped in the face with that now. We really don't control a lot. So it comes back to reflecting, what can you control? Well, the things that Taffy and Charles mentioned, right? And just then, and Patrick was mentioned too already. It's just, you can control, get better, which is, as a basketball team, if you're thinking just basketball, that's what you control throughout the year anyway, right? It's just trying to get better, improve. Does that mean you're going to win a title at the end of the year? I don't know. Who knows? But all you can control is that you can go into practice and try and get better. So on a daily basis here, what can you control? You can control getting better as a person. You know, you can try and reach out, like you say, to people and you know, offer some help if they need it, some compassion if they're not answering your text when they usually do. Like, they're going through something, right? You know, you got to kind of stay on them a little bit and be there if they need you, but really offer help when it's there. And so I think that's one thing that I reflected on a lot, is like, okay, man, you got to just take a deep breath here. Be fortunate, as Charles mentioned, that could really be worse in terms of my scenario. I have two young daughters who love basketball, and my wife loves basketball, so that's great. So, you know, we watch video, and we're going through video as a family. Early on, I talked to Justin in the pandemic, and he was doing video of NBA games with his team. So I started doing that with my guys. We did the Lakers and the Celtics a few years ago, and we did that for a few times. So I think just finding creative ideas, but realizing that, you know what, you really don't control as much as you think. You only really can control, you know, trying to improve yourself and the people you can touch.
some really great insight. And it's kind of cool that you watch like and go through film as a family. That's pretty cool. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that. But if no coach has any further input, I think it might be time to proceed to the next question.
Yeah, I'm gonna let this one slide because I feel like it'll be a broken record if I continue on it. Everybody's touched on the same deal, man. Compassion, understanding, empathy, like just really understanding that like there's something bigger that's taking place right now in the entire world. So just being understanding. So
No, for sure. And I guess we kind of talked about it a bit last week, but you know, we all have all of you will have some commonalities in the things you say, and we'll definitely have some overlap, but we will get into a bit more questions where all of you will be able to speak to your unique experiences, which everyone will definitely take some benefit from. So I will now hand the virtual baton off to Tristan for the next question.
You catch that virtual baton. I'm going to his next question. So second question we got, or third technically, but yeah, so we're gonna talk about the adversity. So I basically wanted Taffy and PT to mostly touch on this one. Obviously all coaches are invited to speak, but I want to focus on you two. And I want to ask you guys, what's a big challenge, learning experience that you have faced in your career? And it could be past or present. And how did you overcome it, or how are you still learning to overcome it right now?
Taffy, you want to start, or you want me to kick this one off? Okay, you're on mute, so I guess I'll start. I mean, I don't know. A challenge, I think, if I were to really think about a challenge, I think, you know, here's a challenge that really kind of played on me for a while was 15, 16, I was the interim head coach at Ryerson. Okay, so I had a really wonderful year with a great group of guys, and kind of rode this high wave. Um, just kind of, it was just like a storybook year for myself. End of the year, I'm thinking to myself, well, I've done 4 or 5 years already at Ryerson, so I really don't want to go back as an assistant coach. If any, for most of the head coaches, they all know, like, once you move one seat over, or at least once you're an assistant coach, you're dying to get one seat over. But then when you're one seat over, you got to make all the decisions. And I was like, okay, I don't want to go back to that assistant role, so I really want to move on and kind of, just try to figure it out. So I had a couple jobs lined up, and a youth sport job didn't go as I planned. It kind of fell through. Pretty much really devastated me, but I don't know. I kind of really just leaned on my faith, leaned on some mentors, and essentially the real job that I was supposed to get kind of landed in my lap.
You're on mute, PT.
PT, you're on mute, man.
That's my apology. Someone came with a baby mad loud. I tried to mute him and then I muted PT. That is
No worries. Yeah, so I'm saying essentially, like, I was at this low point, this challenge where, like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I leaned more so on my faith and talking to some mentors and kind of making the right decision. And the opportunity that presented itself kind of landed me in a gig that was a little bit higher than I probably even aimed to get to. And then once I got that taste, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And then a few different events kind of led me back to MAC, which was really good. So and then today it's like, I don't know, I just feel like it don't really matter what kind of challenge I have. Like, it's just a matter of, like, me kind of like really thinking about all the choices and the options that I have, any opportunity that I have, and really just, like, for myself. I can't really speak for everybody else, but I lean heavily on my faith before I make a decision on whatever the next move is going to have to be. So that challenge for me in 15, 16 was a hard one, because I really want to continue on. But I mean, it opened the door up for me in 17, 18. So that's really all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I'll build upon that just a little bit, and I'll talk about my own adversity story, I guess. I mean, there's piles of them, but I think the message I always had, somebody called me the other day about, everybody's like, hey, how do I get to be where you're at, right? Like, we're lucky we have, 48 of the 48 full-time jobs, the coaching basketball at what was the highest level in Canada. Now it isn't, obviously we have the CBL now, and it was more of a destination, and now, it's turned to be a little bit more of a stepping stone, which is good. But I would say that, like, honestly, every coach here, I would tell you that we weren't their first choice. I tell you that right now. Like, there's a lot of, you gotta get lucky, you definitely, like, even for myself, the first year at Carleton, the first time we came off national championship, I was coaching the women's basketball team. I was coaching the men's basketball team. We'd won 5 in a row. No, we won our first national championship, sorry. And I'd been there for, I don't know, 13 years by that time. And, or 8 years or 9 years. And I applied to be the women's basketball coach at Carleton, and I didn't get the job, right? Like, so it was like, that was like 2003 or something like that. I didn't get the job. And, again, obviously I was a little upset about it, but, I just kept moving forward. And, and 4 years later, the job came up again. And even then, I wasn't the first choice. I think it was the third choice, right? Like, so, again, it was the third choice. 2 people had to turn it down for me to get the job. And I got the job, and, so, I mean, again, there's a lot of adversity there. I mean, everybody who's here that's probably looking to be a coach, it's not that easy. You just got to persevere and be passionate about what you do. And I definitely tell you, if you're doing it for the money, that's probably the absolute wrong thing you should be doing, because it's not a lucrative job, but it's a job that we do appreciate and we do love. So definitely, for all the coaches out there. My adversity story, again, I think, and I wanted to really touch upon this. A lot of the coaches here dealing with mental health issues amongst your team. I think it's a hard one. Like, again, I think, especially back when I was a bit younger, well, 7, 8 years ago, definitely wasn't the resources there to help kids that were in trouble, and even more so, there wasn't the understanding to deal with it, right? Like, with amongst people in general. I think, now, we're 2021, we just had the Medallist Talk Day, and that was great. And, with much more understanding, talk about the ending the stigma and definitely much more knowledge, awareness, empathy towards that, no question about it, which has helped resources better than there were 7 years ago, no question. But the reality is that, we're expected to find a lot of the answers, and we don't have any. It's like we're tasked with, being a head coach. You're every let's say you have 15 people on a team. Well, there's 15 different people that want something individually, right? They need something individually. They want to play more. They want they want more opportunities. And as a coach, your job is to kind of get them, to think about the team. Think about the team and put people in roles and positions that hopefully the team can be successful. You actually also have you have a goal for your team in general. Do you want to be a high performing team? Do you want to be in a place where you can win championships, or what kind of team you want to be? The biggest challenge that I've had in adversity is just generally just trying to balance that all. I mean, balancing, because the reality is, with mental illness, it's something that, it's a very individual thing. And when individuals are thinking individually and there's team goals, it's hard. It's hard to balance those two and balance that too in a competitive environment. It's really, really difficult. And continue to always balance that. Happy where we're at in terms of where there are some resources, but super challenging. I know each and every coach here has had people who've had situations that again beyond what your knowledge is, but you're asked to deal with it. And sometimes you don't have the right answer. Coaches can't pretend that we're expected to know the answers, but inevitably we don't have all the answers. And that's a huge challenge for coaches, a huge challenge. And the reality is, as society is getting better to help people with mental illness, it's still a long way. It's still a long way where, getting access to it and then following up with it is still a long way to go with that. It's still a long way. And it really is dependent upon that individual to recognize they need help and to actually ask for help and to continue to seek help. So balancing all that as a group, as a coach, has been very, very challenging. Been challenged in the past, much better now, but still a challenging thing to move on for in the future.
Yeah, I see what both of you guys are saying. Obviously, it's tough for a situation that PT is in, or that he was in, having your career and your future up in the air, not knowing what's going to happen next. Obviously, just putting faith into things, into God, maybe, whatever you do, putting faith into things and knowing that you'll see it through. And obviously, Taffy, is you as well. Being a coach, obviously, I can imagine all coaches, it's definitely tough. Like you said, you want to be able to balance I guess people's individual goals and also team goals, right? So it's tough because someone's individual goals may not line up with what the team's trying to do, you know what I mean? So I can definitely see why for a coach, that would definitely be a big challenge and an ongoing challenge, moving forward as a coach, for sure. So I definitely like both your points, and I'm opening up the floor for any other coaches that feel like if they want to touch on to what Taffy and PT said, you guys are free to do so.
I would just add in a little bit on that. In terms of aligning goals, a lot of that really comes down to ego, right? And making sure that that the goal is obviously aligned with the team, but you're trying to control people's egos a lot of the time. And I mean, all the coaches will say you can't have a team with 15 egos on it. And in my case, I can't have the biggest ego on the team. I have to have the least amount of ego on the team. And I think knowing, because I'll touch on it a little bit later, but knowing myself as an athlete, I definitely had an ego. And there were definitely goals that I had as an individual player that I was hoping the coach could see in me. And you really, that's what you're looking for a lot of time, right? Is that belief, that coach that'll believe in me that I can really do this. And so I love what both the coaches said. I mean, that doesn't get talked about enough, where we're trying to align together to win a championship while still trying to get individual goals that players need. But ultimately, the biggest one is winning as a team. And that needs, the more players you can get aligned in that's the most important. But just knowing that we actually don't know everything is a funny thing to hear Taffy say, because we're asked to do a lot, especially in U Sport Canada, right? Everybody knows funding isn't ridiculous for sports. We're not the NCAA. And so we're tasked to be the fundraisers. We're tasked to be the mental health coach. We're tasked to be the skills coach, the video coach. We're tasked to do everything. And some of us are stronger in certain areas than we are in others. And so for us, even for our own mental health, to be able to have the confidence to reach out to somebody else and say that, you know what, I can't help you here, but this is where you can go and find the help. And so that's a big step that I think, is great to hear those guys talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Sean just talked about the goals, right? I mean, literally, I kind of say, we're like president, GM, coach, director of student performance, the recruiting coordinator, like throw them all in there. Like, that's a lot of hats to have to run a program. And again, that's why it's tough, right? And again, having the responsibility of doing so is challenging. Again, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. Don't get me wrong. I mean, again, I come from it. Honestly, I wasn't a basketball coach when I started. I worked software sales, so I didn't love that job. So I was fortunate, I was fortunate to have a job that I didn't love and wanted to go to somewhere where this was something I would rather do. So I want to make sure, don't leave this saying that we should feel sorry for us. I definitely don't want that, but it definitely is just some of the hats that we have to wear as coaches is challenging. And I'm sure, Charles, you have some comments on this. I know you're hiding in the weeds there. I know, we had a long conversation when you were at Brock, and, that was definitely something that was challenging for you.
Man,
I mean, listen, I think your comment earlier about, listen, don't feel sorry. We get to coach basketball for a living. Like, we're not, please, and I know Taft's not making it sound like that for anyone who may not know him. It's definitely not that. Like, it's a great gig at the end of the day, and you get to work with young, minds and student athletes. All that stuff's great. There's just a lot to it in the Canadian context, right? As Sean mentioned, there's just a lot more to it. It's kind of like policing in many ways, where you're having to do millions of things you actually weren't necessarily hired to do, or you thought the job was actually about. And so it makes it tricky. And I know there's lots of jobs like that. But certainly this is one that, it comes with a lot of extra applications that you actually also get held accountable to. And so that's another sort of stress that comes with that job, right? Because it's not like, there's 300 of them. There's 48, so oftentimes, or 50, whatever the number is. But oftentimes when people get one, it's like, okay, they do everything to try to hold on to that job, because, it's hard to, it's not like there's a hamster wheel, like, Thibodeau gets fired from one place and ends up in New York. Like, it just doesn't really work that way. It can, but not for most of us. So I think your points are super valid. And I think it's just something that, for everyone who's involved or wants to get involved, just know that it's not just X's and O's, right? There's so much to it. And it's a beautiful thing, and you're figuring it out. And, Taffy's been very successful. Actually, every coach on this panel has been very successful at it in their own way. So, they figure it out. It's not insurmountable. It's just understand that, the challenges are there.
PT, I know you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I'm good, man. You just said the man was hiding in the weeds, which was funny to me. Yeah, the job is interesting, man, but it's good. I love it. I can't complain. I mean, I get more headache more than anything when our guys are, when you, and this isn't just at Mac. I mean, out of, even at Ryerson, we had the issue of like, you don't want to buy into culture, or you want to transfer, or there's a different agenda there. Like those are probably the more adverse situations on a day-to-day basis. And I think the coaches um, that can really manage problems or issues that arise literally month to month are the coaches that typically have some success. Like you can ask Justin. Last year, Justin had a really good team. I think 2 or 3 points away from essentially punching a ticket to the OUA finals and going to nationals. But heck, I guarantee you, he wasn't thinking that in November, December, January, when his team was banged up, taking L after L after L. That was adversity right there. He's trying to figure out, how am I going to just keep this thing alive so that we can make it to where they eventually made it to, essentially losing at the buzzer to Western. So, I mean, there's so many small little battles of adversity, literally week to week, day to day, even month to month, that I feel like I'm losing hair by the year or by the season.
No
No,
response
for
to
sure. I
that,
know
LA, Justin?
Oh. If you guys want to still discuss, I was just gonna speak on PT's point. What?
Go ahead, Tristan. Let's
Thank
speak.
you, PT.
Does Justin want to speak?
You hear me? Can you guys hear me? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, definitely, and that's where, we're trying to, as coaches, we're trying to sell our players like, oh, enjoy the grind, And last year, well, I guess the last season we had, I got the test of that medicine, and I had to make sure I will actually buy into what I was preaching, enjoying the journey, enjoying the grind, and at the end of the season, we actually had a good run in the playoff. And I think looking back, it's everything that we learned from the injuries. We basically had 4 of our starters injured, and 6 of our top 10 players were injured at one point for quite some games. But allowed some of the players to get that experience, right, even through the losing. And I definitely didn't do a good job handling that by any means. I was getting frustrated and all of that stuff. And December came at the right time for us to get healthy and for me to check myself and check myself in the mirror and say, look, you're doing a terrible job handling this situation. How are you going to handle it in the next term? And the lesson we learned from that adversity actually made us, much better, much tighter towards the end of the season. Guys that didn't had a lot of playing time ended up getting some playing time, and they overperformed, going, in a nice little run in the playoffs. So at the end of the day, it's really a very, very tangible example of adversities facing you and punching you in the face, not just 1, but 6 times, literally. You're seeing your best player and all of your best players going down game by game. You don't know, you just don't know when it's going to stop. But then through that adversity, you learn so many things about yourself and your team. And I would say one thing is that at that time, I think what I learned the most for me is that if you're not at your best, mentally, physically, and everything, like as a coach, especially during the season, things can snowball very easily. And I find that the pandemic, the time that I had now to reinvent myself health wise, mentally, and then physically, I think, well, hopefully it's going to help me in the future. In terms of nutrition, I got myself a mental performance coach, and also just physically, just being active every day, so that once I do face that next adversity, hopefully my body can handle it, my mentally and physically, much better than what I did last season. And that's literally a takeaway from that season.
I think the biggest thing is that and what we love and what we enjoy is, and I'm sure Chuck and it's like the Raptors, it's like nobody, it's amazing. Nobody feels sorry for you. That's the best part. Nobody feels sorry for you. And you're battling out. You're like, oh, this guy's hurt. It's like, that's great. Let's move. It feels bad. But, that's what we signed up for. And, I think that adversity does make you stronger for sure. I mean, that's the reality. Unfortunately, you learn more from losing than winning. It's just true. You just take too many. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Indeed, that's how it goes for sure. I like the point you made, Ceres, about even having like a mental coach to help you out, especially during the season, because as a coach, you're basically the leader of your squad. So if you're not mentally okay, then I feel like that can trickle down to your players as well. So yeah, I agree with everything you all said. So yeah, I'm gonna just give off to Brando, and Brando's gonna come with another question.
All right, thanks for that, Tris. So this question, just much like how Tristan kind of formulated it, will be for two of the coaches, Coach Justin and Coach Kissy. So, but same way, like any of the other coaches, just like the other question, can jump in and really touch on it if they'd like and speak to it. But I know with coaching, there's a lot of ups and downs. You have a lot of great moments, and some of them might not be the best. But my question was, what is a moment in your career that changed how you viewed coaching and why? Either of you can go whichever. I'm not gonna pick on anyone. So
I'm not gonna lie. I don't have any one moment. Like the way I look at my coaching, and I've always tried to look at my coaching is just through growth. So there's lots of moments where I'm like, oh, geez, like, I got to switch this up. Or, I give you an example. In my final year at Brock, we lost that first game to Calgary. And to Justin's point, I can say my mind wasn't there. I was battling the OUA on some other stuff. I was, just like there was a lot on my brain. I'd worked all these years to get to a national tournament, and these guys will tell you how hard it is to get there. Taffy kind of lives there, but for the rest of us, it takes a lot. It's a lot. And even Taffy, I joke about it, but he's worked his face off to put himself in that position in his team. So it's a lot of work. And I felt like after that game, we lost the game, and I took a walk back to the hotel. I didn't take the bus. I took a walk. And the one thing that sort of came out for me was, man, you're not having fun. Like you're not, there's so much like on this game and in your brain and happening, and you got to win this thing and all this pressure. I wasn't enjoying it. Like I forgot, I guess, to enjoy the process, along the way. I think that was the thing. I was enjoying being at the Nationals. I just forgot, all of that work to just enjoy it, and so I guess, that's one moment, but that's kind of one of many. It was just really trying to, enjoy it as you're going through it, as hard as it can be, perspective, back to what I said earlier. We have great jobs and it's great opportunities. It's such an honor to be, if you're at youth sport coach or anywhere, it's an honor to be in the finals. It's an honor to be in the tournament or whatever it is. And that was one for me that, I forgot to enjoy. And then the next, 2 games, the moment I made that decision, we were blowing teams out and kind of having fun with it again. But sometimes, when you're in that moment, you think that's all that there is. So again, having that perspective, I think, is part of my growth. And I think that's one particular moment of the Nationals. But I would say there's so many moments that just allow me to, sort of think about how I'm coaching my team. I think about even, when Donald Trump got elected, I know guys on our team that were listening will remember we had a 15, 20-minute chat at the beginning of practice about what that could mean and what it looks like. And this is years before any of these movements. I'm talking about, having these understandings of what, the implications could be and what it meant for us and, how it could impact people's lives. So, I think there's lots of things that you sort of take to improve your coaching, or at least for me, or to help me be better. But it's all also intertwined, because I see coaching as a part of who I am, or some of those elements. So it's not like, I coach and so that these things are over here, but I have to bring myself to that job, right? So it really is, at the end of the day, about getting better as a human so that I can be better as a coach. That's at least part of it for me. On to you, Coach Ceres.
Yes, thank you. very similar than Charles. That when I got the question, I was like, you know what? There's not like a moment that just pop out, and I would be like, oh, this is the moment. What I had wrote it down was that I don't know for the other coaches in the panel, but it almost like I myself, I kind of bumped into coaching. I was kind of done playing, so I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to be too bored, so let me try that coaching thing. And Coach Swords hooked me up with the coach at Ottawa U. And realistically, I didn't really have a philosophy as a coach. I didn't really think about it. But then now that I look back, I almost feel like my philosophy and what the moments that what I value now, it's kind of a lot of it is based off my experience as a player. Things that I liked, the way I was as a player, I guess, but things that I liked through my journey as a player, things that I didn't really appreciate when I was a player. And the one thing that really got me going with coaching was the player development side of it. Just because back in France, when we were growing up, it was a lot of team-oriented development, but didn't have a lot of one-on-one development that I feel like I could have benefited from. So I jumped into it as a coach right away, and really trying to use that as a way for players to gain confidence, just because they had better skill set, but also just being in there here all the time as a player development coach, you can help them mentally to get ready for the game, just believe in themselves so much. And also, I felt like it was led to, when I was a player, I had one season where I really did well, and I got recruited by a pro team, I guess, in France through that season, because I had a coach that actually believed in me and gave me that confidence. So I was like, okay, you know what? If I become a coach, I want my players to feel the same way I felt when I was, that player, and things that you didn't like and whatever. So long story short, I feel like the moment that I realized what was important as a coach, a moment that really felt like it was before I actually became a coach, and the values that I have for me as a man, I continue to I guess implement that into my coaching. Accountability, work ethic, because I wasn't the most talented player. I needed to work, have better work ethic to be better. I didn't really have that. So I was always told myself as a coach, I can't look back and say I didn't have a good work ethic, and that's the reason why I'm getting fired tomorrow, or things like that. The commitment I have, loyalty that I have to my players, and just the love and care that I have for them. Not to be like Mr. Nice Guy, hey, you're my guy, I love you. No, it's really just telling them the truth, or your truth, or whatever the case may be at the moment that you need. And then at the end of every year, you look back and you just, that's the moment you realize you didn't know nothing. I feel like every year at the end of the season, I'm like, oh my God, last year I didn't really know nothing about coaching. Or like, I thought I was working hard. I really didn't work hard at all. Like, I could have done better in this. And every year of my life, I'm like, last year I really sucked. And this year, even though, and it's not about like winning losses, it's really just, as a coach, how I help the guys, how performing, or whatever the case may be, in all of those aspects, not just the the score, with the analytics and all of that stuff, really the big picture of the program. And as long as I think I have that mentality, I hope that I'll be okay. So those are the moments. I don't know if I answered that question, but that's how I wrote it down before. I hope that makes sense.
No, definitely. I feel like the common theme between both of you was really just looking at like the process and the development of just your personal values and how they can etch over into like helping out your players and your team as a whole. So I definitely think that's beneficial regardless if it answered the question or not. But I'd like to open up the floor to any of the other coaches. PT, I seen you nodding your head, laughing. So I know you'd have something to speak about it too, but
I might have something, but I actually want to hear Sean, because I know Sean, played on our national team. He's done some stuff. I'm actually curious. I really want to know.
Okay, so Sean, you've been called out. I mean, by all means.
The next question's mine, so I was saving some of it for that. But I think, I really kind of built my coaching off who I have been coached by. And I took a little bit, or I took a little bit from a lot of my coaches. a little bit what Justin mentioned, some of the good, some of the bad, some of what I want to do, some what I didn't want to do, right? So, and I've been coached by like some ridiculous coaches, right? So Dave Smart was my club coach in high school at Guardsman, and we were very tight for, I guess, 9 years until I got to Laurentian, and we're still really close. Not that we weren't, but he was my coach for a long time. And so, you know, I took a lot of things from him. And then I was coached by Jay Triano, who's an unbelievable coach. Mike Cates, crazy coach. Peter Campbell here at Laurentian, unbelievable, right? Gave me some confidence. And then I had played overseas for 10 years. So I had a lot of different coaches over there that really left a little bit from me, and that I kind of take in. And I just remember one for sure is Charlie O'Fray, who coached me my last pro contract, actually. And one thing he mentioned resonated a lot with me too, is just that he's a coach, and he actually retired and started coaching again. And the reason he came back is because the GM, the owner of the team at the time, said, you can pick all the players you want. So you'll be the essential of the GM. And he said, you know what, fine. I'm only taking guys that I'll get along with. If this is my team, I'm not bringing a guy in just because he's really talented and he's going to get me to the promised place. I'm going to be at the gym with these guys more than my family. So I want to make sure when I get to the gym, I like every guy who's in there. And so I think that was one that kind of stuck with me a lot too. And my Swiss coach, Rondo de Sassayan too, is, very good coach, but even better person. So I think, PT, when you talk about that, I think it's all the coaches just kind of leave a little bit with you, and you try and take the best. So even the ones you don't think are very good, you kind of try and take something from them that maybe you wouldn't use, or, a year later after playing for him, you're like, wow, I really didn't like that guy, but I like this part of what he did. So, for me, that's what I try and mold everything I learned and put it and present it as Sean Swords. So hopefully it's something new that people haven't seen before, but I guess that's my short/long answer to that.
Hey, Sean, I wanted to build upon that because you really I was going to say something about, and maybe along these lines. I think the one thing that we always battle with, I battled with this, and I know a lot of coaches battle with, is having too much perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you think about it, who's done anything that's worth anything that, like sometimes like how important was it? Like sometimes we can, and you have to play that balance of not having too much perspective, because if you had too much perspective, you would never do anything. Like you'd never do anything. You'd never achieve. You never, I know for myself, it's like, I took over a team, women's basketball team, and I mean, if there was 47 teams, we're like 42 or 47, right? Like it was like, and I took it over, and I'm like, well, I wrote something saying we're going to win national championship or go to the national championship in 5 years. And I remember I read that paper now. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, are you serious? Like, what are you doing? Like, like you just, and if I look back on it, I'm like, what the hell was I talking about? But, sometimes you got to kind of have no perspective about certain things to actually achieve things. And reason why I say that, and sometimes when you get caught as a coach, you're always like, would it really matter if we win or not? Or, like you got to dream big. And I would say that with Sean, like, Sean and I played against each other, and I'll be honest, I thought he was better than Sean, to be honest with you. Like, but man, honestly, I wasn't, because he had a mindset that, there's no way, like, and Sean, you can talk about this. You making that national team, like, who believed that you were going to make it other than yourself? Like, honestly, who did? Like, like I'm making this team. Like, I don't know, I'll do whatever it takes. And to have that perspective, and because there's a million people that could have told you that you weren't going to make that team. A million, if you listened to them. But you didn't. You said, I'm making this team, right? And, again, a lot of people had a lot better resumes than you, going to making that team. And guess who's on it? So, and I say that, but inevitably it's like, okay, well, coach, when do I, and some people, I'm going to make the NBA tomorrow. Like, well, no, like, like you got, it's a game that you play. And I know that's an important part of trying to be successful, whatever you do. John, what do you think about what I just said there?
I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously, you just said we played against each other, but people don't know Taffy's history. Carleton was not as good a team when Taffy played, but Taffy was an unbelievable player. So one of the best scorers in the OUA when he played. And so, yeah, you were better. I mean, you were better at most facets of the game, I think. And like, for sure. And even on making the national team, I don't know if I believed that I was going to make the national team, right? Like I'd made the student team and just like barely. And people have heard my story a little bit, but I was like, Jay Jana was coming in to cut me. I wasn't going to be on the team the year before, the qualifying team. He was coming in to meeting and said, you know what, Sean, and he, we're not going to be able to bring you. And then right when he said it, he changed his mind like on the spot and said, you know what, forget what I just said, you're coming. And so I was completely shocked. I didn't really process that I was cut. So it didn't hit me that hard because he changed his mind so fast. But yeah, I didn't think I was going to make it. But then once I got that opportunity, and a lot of thanks goes to all my coaches. I think Mike Cates is a huge one there. He had coached me on a student national team before that and said, listen, he had told Jay, he's like, don't cut him until you take him on a trip. And for people that don't know, international trips are really tough. Like you're playing 9 games in 11 days. I mean, I never played AAU, but I imagine it's like an AAU schedule where we're not playing the same day, but it kind of feels like that. Like, so you're playing a lot of games in a lot of days. You're halfway around the world. And so he'd kind of talked to him and said, you know what, take him on the trip. Don't cut him until you take him on a trip. And I went on the trip and I was positive. I mean, I think that might've been a changed mindset for me as a player, just trying to stay positive. And I know, how can I impact the game without actually getting on the floor? Because the first 2 games or so of the trip, I got like 20 seconds of playing time. So, I think that you were speaking the truth for sure, that I wasn't better than you. I didn't think I was, and I definitely didn't think I was making the national team. So throw me into that million that was against me. But I just work my butt off and see what happens. I don't control who makes the team. I just control how hard I can work.
No, but I mean, in hindsight, and that's what I'm saying, compared to what you've done now, and in hindsight, there's obviously reasons why you did. And, just the ridiculous competitiveness. And, obviously Justin talked about what you did for him as a coach and, people running through the walls for you. And I think that, so there is a reason why. I mean, there's no question about it. And then obviously take advantage of that opportunity. And I think it goes back to, like you got, if they had a list of 60 people, you were like 60, like, but he's on it, like we get lucky sometimes. And what do you do with that? You need a little bit of luck, and you need a little bit of, like straight losing perspective. But I do think when I say the last thing about losing perspective, I would say that you do have to check back with your perspective and say, well, what have you done? You know what I mean? Like, as you're losing perspective, okay, well, I want this. Well, what are you going to do about it? I think that's probably the one thing I would say with people is because, I get a lot of people say, I'm going to, make your team or come and make your team. And it's like, well, okay, what have you done about it? And I think that's probably part of it too. But I think, I just look back on it, really, if you look, people have big visions and done great things. And usually because they didn't have a perspective where they didn't listen to when people told them that they weren't going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pipe in there because I don't want to confuse, because I do agree with them too, by the way. But the way I view perspective is like, because Sean just said it, like, hey, I had to be super positive. I made this team. I gotta, he had a mindset. Perspective is not, to me, always, has nothing to do with necessarily goals or passion or perseverance or dedication or commitment or all of those things that you're describing that allows you to be successful. Just so we're clear, like for me, it's always about, I look myself in the mirror every day, like I think, that sort of being grounded and knowing that, hey, I'm getting there or I'm not getting, whatever it is you're choosing. And in most of it, and I think in everyone's case here, we're choosing to get there. You're still making a choice based on what you see at the end of the day when you look in the mirror. And I think for me, that's, when I talk about perspective, that's what it is. You gotta have a mirror in front of you at all times, knowing where you're going, being able to check yourself, as Coach Suresh said, right? If he doesn't do that, if he doesn't look in the mirror in December and say, hey, wait a minute, like what is going on? And I'm doing a terrible job with this. He doesn't have that perspective. He's not moving forward. He made a choice from that point with that perspective to say, hey, I'm going to get to where I'm going to go. You know, Coach, you know, Taffy doesn't get the job at Carleton on the women's side. And it's a gut check. It's like, okay, I got to look at myself and realize, okay, you know, I'm not just going to put my head down and grind. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get back to that place. And then when I get my opportunity, you know, the perspective that you carry with me is I'm killing this thing. Like I told myself, you know, at day one, when my team was 4-18 at Brock, that we're going to a national championship by the time I'm done here. And that's the perspective that I carry with me. We were getting there no matter what. And that's part of it. So, you know, just to sort of, you know, understand that it's, you know, perspective for me and humility and all of that goes in it can definitely help fuel you for those listening, right? It's also, it's not just a grounding mechanism. It's a sort of a driving mechanism in many ways, as far as I'm concerned.
Brandon, I believe.
Yeah. No, I didn't know if anyone else was going to take over, but yeah, if there's nothing else to say on that question as far as that goes, then I guess I'll just pass it out to Kwesi. But I just wanted to say, like, that conversation evolved into something that I feel that was really beneficial for everyone. And yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part. So thank you guys. But moving on to the next question, I'll just pass it over to Kwesi.
Thanks, Brandon. And it's funny you say that, because even at our rehearsal last week, we talked about how we're organically going to speak to different things. So it's just amazing seeing all the tidbits of wisdom you're giving us just through, you know, just talking. So I'm going to get to the last question before a lot of the people here have the questions they're, you know, really trying to ask. This one is geared towards, you know, Coach Swords, but like you kind of see with the way we do things, it's definitely going to go to everyone here. I guess I just wanted to gear it to him first, because when we think about, you know, his player resume and his coaching resume, you know, coaching for Canada, playing for Canada, if someone saw my comments before, just the fact that he was an Oiwe All-Star for, I think, 4 out of 5 of his years. I tried to do my research, I tried to do my due diligence, but did a lot. So I guess I just want to ask you, just so you could take all your experience and just, you know, try to give back and help people gain perspective as they navigate their lives. You know, what are 1 or 2 things you wish you could have told yourself looking back when you started? You know, whether it's as a varsity athlete, whether it's a coach, or just a person in general. You know, given everything you learn now, basketball-wise, life-wise, just the choice is yours.
Yeah, I think, well, first, we get back just to perspective. I actually wrote down my first year at Laurentian that I would, you know, a dream goal was to play on the national team, the senior national team. So, you know, I did have that craziness to think that, because nobody would have thought that for me going into Laurentian. I think talking to my younger varsity athlete self, yeah, it'd be tough, right? Like, I know he's ridiculously competitive, right? So his compete level's off the charts, and his stubbornness level is probably a little bit higher, maybe. So he wouldn't listen to me, but I would say, man, basketball is going to take you a lot of places. Like, you're gonna develop some amazing relationships with people. You're gonna travel around the world with it. Like, you won't even believe what I'm gonna tell. Like, you're gonna play. You're gonna be a teammate of a 2-time MVP of the NBA, and he's gonna actually pass you the ball and want you to shoot. Now, don't shoot. Pass it back to him, because he's a better shooter. But you know, that would lead me to the next part, is like, work on your skills a little bit more. I don't think I spent as much time, especially as much time as people do now, working on our skills and working on the, I guess, getting a consistent shot. I always had the confidence to shoot, but just being a little bit more consistent. So spend a little bit more time, you know, working on that shot. Because currently, right now, I sit in my house and my wife and my 2 kids shoot the ball better than I do. And so it would help me at this point as well, too. And I think even for life at that age, I think I would, you know, that's a lot to unravel, too. I think I would just harp back on something that would lead me in a better path, would be, you know, focus on the academics a little more. You know, I think athletes today do a way better job than I did. You know, I really took basketball as my driving force, and I would do anything for the team. Anything, tell me what to do, tell me what time to put in, I'll put in more. But then when it came to school, it was a complete opposite. It was like, okay, what can I do to get by? You know, what's the minimum? And for somebody who's very competitive, I should have took that, take that competitive spirit to the academic side. And really, when I look at it, it was a facade in the sense that I actually like to learn, and I did like to learn back then. So, drop the facade, buy into it, and really stop being so lazy. It won't affect your athleticism or your skill set as a basketball player. It'll actually help you be a better basketball player. So those are some of the myths that I think I put into my own head at the time. And I had some great examples in front of me. Brad Hand was an amazing basketball player, Laurentian, and an academic All-Canadian and an All-Canadian in basketball. And my sister Carolyn was she was a back-to-back national championship at Laurentian University, and she was a Rhodes Scholar finalist. So, I had those right in my face at the time and chose to think, no, I can't do like they could. And I really think I could. So, that was something two things I would tell myself, the younger athlete. But, we talked about just being a coach. And I think there's more important things I would tell myself as a younger coach is it's really trying to get to know your athletes, just people in general, right? Like try and invest more time into it. I think as coaches, I think for myself, for sure, I try and have that open door policy. And, if you want to come and talk to me, come and talk to me. And, we say that at the start of the year, but then, I know when I was young, I didn't really follow up with that much. It was always just a known thing that's there. And if you want to come and talk to me, talk to me. But I don't think that's really good enough. I think, I think it requires more effort, right? It requires more things to become connected with your team, with people, so that you can generate that trust, right? That they feel that you're somebody they can come and talk to if some things are down, and not just that they heard it in September, that they feel it every single day as you're here with you. And for us, it's 5 years. Guys are usually with us, right? So it's, you can keep building on that all the time. And I don't think as a young coach, I really took that in. I took in more of how can we be better, better team and better players and better people for sure, but not really following through with the better people part. More of just kind of letting it hang there in the air and hoping that they'll pick up from example, not from actually from getting it from me. So that, that those are some things that kind of resonate a lot with me, and I made me think about it a lot. And I think all those things can kind of come back to being in the present, like really live in the present moment. I think everybody deserves, to kind of have the best you present when you're there. And so really trying to give that to your players when you're there, give that to your family when you're there. Now you're going to fail. I mean, you're going to fail sometimes, but really trying to achieve that flow, which is some people have been reading it. I've been reading a lot of that lately. And I think that how to get to, optimal performance is really trying to buy into that. How can I be the best me and have that flow attitude throughout my life, not just basketball.
That's definitely a lot of knowledge to take in. And I guess the one thing that really stuck out to me, I guess because you were talking about your experiences as coaching, but just developing that player-coach relationship, and especially when I think about your case and all the coaches here, having both sides of that story, being the player and the coach. And I think Coach Torres touched on it as well. I just think it's really important, to take that time to just really connect with your players, because at the end of the day, the same way you had your struggles and you continue to have your struggles at the coaching level, you can kind of relate to what they go through. And the more you show them, like I'm there for you, like I hear you to the best as you can, because you all have your own stresses, you'll start to see a lot more, well, in my opinion, I'm not a coach or nothing, I'm sorry, but I feel like you'll start to see a bit more fruitfulness to your team culture and your environment. I guess, it was just really great points. And I guess we're reserving the end for some questions, but if any coach here wants to touch on some lessons or takeaways, by all means.
Hi, I'm hijacking your meeting. First of all, I don't have a lot of basketball background. I think I dunked my first basketball in grade 9, 4'7", but I had a tremendous amount of vertical. But I'm a speed doctor. When Shelly posted the Instagram post, I wanted to join. I wanted to think outside the box and learn from other leaders such as yourself in the basketball area, Mr. Swartz, It's a pleasure seeing you again. I work with these athletes. I work with the Sudbury Five to get them going as a speed doctor. I'm an Olympic gold medal world champion, Olympic Hall of Famer. And I've always believed in, as a coach, we have to go beyond and learn other genres, other things. And I love being an athlete, because I always say, you know, be an athlete first before you be a sprinter, a basketball player, or whatever it is. And I want to take some notes. So as a leader, I took some notes, and hopefully you guys can take some of this within your life. For the coaches on a personal level, some of you guys might have extended medical. I want you guys to literally book an appointment with a massage therapist at least once a month to detox and get some of the stress out. You need to have some me time as coaches. Okay, so that's the rule number one. Hopefully you take away. Someone mentioned about individual and teamwork and the egos. I believe coach, my philosophy is the head coach is he's the alpha dog. Anyone coming in, and this is your family now as your team, anyone coming in has to check that ego at the door, because it starts and stops with the coach. So everyone's gonna have different personalities, different cultures, different height, different level, different set skills. They must understand it starts and stops with here, but we're going for a championship. Within that championship, everyone plays a role, and those athletes will know what the roles are. And I'm gonna call on you, and you must learn other people's role, because injuries do happen where you need to step up. So I came up with 5 things they call the 5F. Okay. Faith is number one, and we hear a lot about the faith. And I always believe faith should always start the process. It doesn't matter what religion a person has, they have a faith background. The faith allows us to have, during a difficult period of a losing streak or the pandemic, it allows us to connect and reset and plan out. So the faith should be always number one, whatever that is. As a man of international, I have to deal with many different faiths, so I can't be, I would call it zeroed on my own faith, because everyone's faith could be potentially right. I deal with 10 commandments and go from there and have an open conversation. The next one of the F is called the fear. You know, what is the motivational factor? As coaches, as athletes, what motivates us to be where we want to be? Some of them could be income, some of them job, some of them family. And the most important I like is the passion. If you got that piece, that's a big piece to the puzzle of success. The next one after that is called the favors, right? The support system, the friendship, a great panel like yourself with coaches from all over the place where you can plug into each other and help each other along the way, or make a phone call. Hey, this happened in the game. How do I fix this? Just that support system is important. Focus is the next one of the 4. What is the main goal? I'm sorry, I'm an athlete. I like to win. Ain't no doubt about it. Anything I touch should be gold, and anybody around me should be touching for gold. So you still have to have that mindset that competitiveness must be there to want to win. And no matter what you do in live sport, it's about winning. From we're born, we're in competition. We're going to a classroom, we're in competition. We're going for a job interview, we're in a competition. It's the real world. My son, he's born, his name is Lion. I told him, you're going to break Tiger Woods' record. It's a competition. You're named Lion for a damn reason. All right, so that's the 4th one. And the 5th one, frustration, folks. Frustration. We get frustrated. Athletes get frustrated. Your wife gets frustrated. You get frustrated. Many different things can cause frustration. The COVID is a damn frustration right now to all of us. We want to get back to playing basketball, right? So frustration, injuries, and some of them I would like to say is unmet expectations, right? Some athletes going to come into your system. We're expecting to get 10 minutes playing time per game. They may not get that. It's the coach's job to say, listen, you ain't going to get 10 minutes. I'm going to give you 2. But guess what? You put your work in and you develop your stuff. You might get 4, you might get 5, you might get 10 on one night, but don't expect this consistency until you perform consistently and putting in your work. And when we deal with the athletic side as an athlete, there's some things I wanted to take away, make your notes. I always look for a mindset in an athlete, right? I find as of late, with the mental health stuff, a lot of athletes are physically strong, but mentally is not there yet.
I just want to sincerely apologize. I do not mean to like cut you short there. I just feel I just really want to make sure the coaches have their window to speak. I'm so grateful for your presence here. I know you're Olympic gold medalist. You have such an extensive experience. You have so much you have done and so much you have done for our country. And I do not mean to cut you short. And I know many would be happy to speak to you, and many coaches can definitely benefit from the things you have to say. But I guess I just really want to respect the time of the other people here. And again, like, I have the utmost respect for everything you do. But I guess for now, we will proceed to I guess closing message, because I guess I just really want a bit more time for the Q&A. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone that came through. Through my varsity experience, I know my biggest takeaway has been that I'm much more than an athlete, and I want to continually show that we're all more than that. Even coaches, you're all more than coaches. You're all people with, like I said in the beginning, your own struggles, your own tribulations, and things you've overcome. And especially when I think about, some of the amazing stories that our coaches have shared here, I think we just really show that. And I guess I wanted to add one thing, especially with what I do through the Reach series. Next month I'm releasing a program called the Reach Series Lite, which is basically a quick, short digital program where I kind of culminate a lot of my experiences and give you a bit of tips for you to, gain some insight and gain some, tools for convenience. Because aside from what I've done on the court, like I have a 3.9 GPA, I've won around $50,000 in scholarships, and I kind of just summarize and give tiny, convenient insights as to how, people can see some, achievement in their life. And for the next while, 40% of my proceeds are going to go to the Black Business and Profession Association to teach youth financial literacy. But now, if I could get to the general thanks, I just really want to thank everyone who's helped set up, especially when I think about my school and the many people here. When I think about my athletic department, like Moa, Jay, Mike, Claire, like PT, like just there's a big thank you to everyone, especially from Mac and our moderators. I really want to thank the coaches and just everyone of you here for coming. I know you all came here to learn, but end of the day, you are, supporting the Reach series and what I do, and I can only have the utmost respect for that. And I guess even when I think about this panel right here, I actually want to really thank the coaches. I'm sorry, I can't even get over that. Like, you all really took the time out of your day. You all really met with me and talked with me from, even in December when I just had an idea, and y'all really helped me realize that. So I just have the utmost respect and genuinely wish you all success and, the best in everything you do. And I just couldn't end this thing without saying that. But even when I think about these panels going forward, I'm looking for ways to expand, and I'm looking for ways to grow and continually get new ideas. So if anyone has any, kind of suggestions on things like sponsorship or just other venues I could pursue, I believe I might look into an event dedicated to, female coaches and just expanding things. But I'm stressing with school, some master's applications and things of that sort, but that's another story. But I think we've all spoken a lot, and you all definitely have some questions you want to ask. So I believe now we will open the panel for those who want to stay for a bit of Q&A. But the first thing we'll do is just address the questions that were sent to us anonymously on Instagram yesterday, and then we'll proceed to just the general Q&A.
Okay, yeah, so I wrote down a bunch of the questions. Kwesi, I don't know if you want to read off any of the ones that were sent to you directly first, or we could touch first on the chat. It's completely up to you.
Brandon, I believe you could touch on the questions that you took note of first.
Okay, sure thing. So the first question that I'll just read off is, this person wants to know how the coaches took the next step into their coaching career. Like, how did they find the route to jump from wherever they were before getting involved with post-secondary coaching? So if you guys just want to touch on that, like, what things helped make that leap to the next level, and what suggestion would they have for young coaches looking to make that jump one day?
I'm going to answer that. I think the biggest thing is you got to coach. If you want to coach, you got to coach. Very simple. There's lots of things to coach. I think a lot of people want to jump into, right to certain levels. Okay, I want to coach, so I can coach. I want to coach university. I want to coach college. The reality is that there's a lot of opportunities to coach, and really coaching at the younger levels. We talk about a lot, and as a coach generally, if the best coaches if I had a choice, the best coaches would be at the youngest levels. At like U10, U9, like those are where the best coaches should be. People want to skip those steps, but you learn a lot in those steps. You learn a lot about, you can make some mistakes. You learn a lot about interaction with kids. You learn a lot about interaction with parents. A lot about afforded to make a lot of mistakes, to be honest with you, because but I think a lot of people want to skip those steps, and I think every coach here, they've been fortunate to do it, coach at lower levels, but I think what we look for coaches is, that's a lot of volunteer work. You're really serious about it. I think that's something that you can't miss. I think that's probably the biggest thing I would say. I know people think that, a lot of us, we did a lot of those things when we were younger.
I'll just add to that. I agree, because I 100% agree. You got to coach. And then, I always say this: take from your current jobs, and take all those skills. Coaching is not like some separate entity that, you got to be trained to do. Taffy was in sales, for example, that, take that. There's lots that he learned there that he could transfer to make him a better coach, along the way. So I would say, take from if you're not coaching for a living professionally, there's lots that you are learning to do now that you can apply to coaching. So don't look at it as some separate, technical, tactical basketball thing. There's so much more to it, as you've heard over the last hour and a half. So I think it's important to keep an open mind when you're thinking about coaching, and don't just view it as an orange round ball and how to put it in the basket more often than not.
I'm gonna just touch on it because I think it's important. I do really think that. So like when I was a young guy trying to coach, I was like, yeah, I love the X's and O's. I just want to do X's. Man, it has nothing to do with X's and O's half the time. I'm kid you not. One of the things I've learned real quickly before I got my chance to work with the Maine Red Claws, I worked with Scott Morrison. For some of you who don't know Scott, he was the head coach at Lakehead. Then he was the head coach for the Maine Red Claws, right? And now he's an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics. But one of the things that he mentioned to us when we first got to Maine was like, you got to be willing to work every single position. You got to be willing to do the laundry. You got to be willing to hand Gatorade out. You got to be willing to drive the bus. Like, you've got to be willing to do the lowest end job that comes with the territory if you want to coach. It's not just about that guy that stands up on the sideline calling out plays, or the guy that's in the huddle writing down what's going to take place in this ATO. And I think I learned that from Roy, but it really struck home when I was at the G League level, and Scott was damn near the oldest intern head coach, or the oldest intern initially, and then turned into a head coach, and then did that for 4 years, and essentially got his job, or got his position, his lucky break to be with the Celtics right now. So I'd tell a lot of young aspiring coaches, like, you just got to be super, super humble. You got to be willing to roll your sleeves up and work every and any single job, not asking for money, not asking for anything, just putting your head down and trying to learn it at every little spot that you get to.
Yeah, you got to be prepared to do it for free, and I think that's probably the biggest thing I'd say. And coaches see that. We see that, and organizations see that. They see, the people who are humble and want to do extra. They really do. And again, we also do see the people who are like, oh, yeah, I want to coach, and then okay, I want to stand up and pretend I'm running the show. And hey, the players see that as well. In terms of the people who are, and those players will be your advocates, to be honest with you, at the end of the day, like, about guys who really have helped them, right? So hope that helps answer the question.
I'll add one last piece very quickly. Mentors. Find people that you can look up to, that you can work with, that can provide some guidance. PT talked about Scott Morrison and Roy and all the great, coaches that he's gotten to work with. Coach Swords talked about all the list of coaches. I think that's important. It does impact. It's so it's invaluable. Like you need people who are where you want to be, helping you along the way. Like relationships are important. Let's not kid ourselves. Hard work, yes, but relationships matter. So I think, you have to make sure that you're also doing that and you're building them along the way.
Big facts.
Yeah. If no other coaches would like to speak on the question, I'll move on to the next one, if that's okay. So, okay, the next question that I had was, what do you believe is better to prioritize as a coach, winning or growth/development?
I have a very simple answer. Winning is a byproduct of all of those things done well. You don't just win, like you gotta grow, you gotta develop, it's a byproduct. That's my very short answer. It's not, I want to win and that, poof. I'll leave it at that.
Simple, man.
I mean, it depends on, I think I'm sure there's more questions because it's at what age are we talking about here, and that's always a big discussion about what age are we talking about. Development obviously got to be is super important, and doing the little things properly, and I would say the reality is, and I think I learned this halfway through my coaching, if the players you have are successful and feel successful, then you'll be successful. And that's the reality of the situation. You got to really focus on the players, their success, and if they're successful, then you'll be successful, and that's how I'd look at it.
I'd add, I think we've slowly changed it. It's not about winning, right? It's about success. Because if you just look at winning, then we would all just say that Taffy's been winning for 15 years and we're all losing, which I don't feel like a loser. I feel like I'm successful. I feel like our teams are successful. So I think, the mindset has to be changed from that to not allow other people to dictate or define what success is to you. And success has all kinds of different ways and looks all kinds of ways. And so I think specifically in our situation, or even myself personally, I think Taffy touched on a little bit in just competitiveness. I think that is a more important skill that we need to develop, not winning and losing, right? It's like competitive. Like I love to compete. Do I hate losing? I don't hate losing. I don't like it. I definitely don't hate it. Like I don't like it. I'd rather win. Do I love winning? No, I don't love winning. I like to win, right? I'd rather win than lose, but I want to compete. Like if I lose, I want to play again and beat me again. If I win, let's play again. I want to beat you again. So I want to keep competing, right? And so I think that to get to that point, you really have to focus on your process. Like that's part of the process is competing, right? I enjoy the process of competing and the result. Okay, I want to win. And yeah, it pushes me. I want to win. But man, if I hated losing, I'd have a really bad life, right? Let's say you only lose one game all year and you hate it that much, that's going to ruin a lot of other days just because you lost one game, right? So I think that's something that I try and take and try and instill in people. But trying to teach people competitiveness, that's a tough one.
All right, is that it for that question? Is everyone good to move on to the next one? All right, sounds good. So the next question that I had here was, how do you balance playing really hardworking players that are less talented with really talented players that don't have the same ethic?
I think I like to answer that because I tend to play those guys a little bit more, but you can't play them all at the same time if you want to stay competitive. But you got to play some of those. I've been a big believer in. Maybe because I was that guy who I wasn't really good and trying to still get me a starting spot. So I was competing really hard, and everything you wanted me to do, I'll do it. And maybe I learned without even thinking about it. I maybe learned from that, experience. But in all jokes around, I think if you in your program you do value hard work, accountability, and all of those things that we tend to all have in common. I believe so. Well, then you end up not playing those guys who aren't as talented, but yet you always play some of the guys that are more quote unquote more talented, but give you more problems, or kind of creating issues with your chemistry and whatever the case may be. I think you kind of as a coach, you're losing your voice, you're losing the trust from the team, I think. So I think you do need to play those guys. And to just give you guys an example, Joseph Faux was one of my players my first couple of years at Laurier, and we weren't really good, but we were competing. And I always ended up playing him. Sometimes he played 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Sometimes he didn't play, but sometimes he would play like 25 minutes. And he was one of those guys that kind of reminded me as a player when I was at Laurentian. And I ended up playing him quite a few. And then he always asked me like, "Oh, coach, I appreciate you playing me, telling me those things." And I'm like, "Look, I know you're gonna. At the end of the year, he will have won us. So go down the list." And I always say like, "Look, you won us this game. At this moment, you did this and this and this. You get that rebound, you get that deflection, you get that thing. And if you value those things, you can always strike down." And I always count that at least 3 games a year, Faux will be one of the guys that changed the game for us and actually give us a win. So, and when you only win 11 games a year, 3 out of 11, man, trust me, I'll take that any day. So, yeah, that's my view on it.
I think you got to balance. Obviously, you got to have a system that can support both. I think. In terms of the way that you want to play, so that there's roles that everybody knows that they need to follow. So that the people who are maybe not as talented could still be effective. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is like coaches sometimes, we and it's hard at the younger levels. We don't have much time to coach, but you have to develop. What are the less talented players? What can they do offensively? Where can they go? What are their roles offensively? How can they, other than putting the ball in the basket, how can they help? Right? If you don't really set up something that gives them some sort of, if it's spacing, if it's rebounding, if it's, setting good screens, rolling hard to the basket. Like, if you don't reward those things or even value those things, then how are you ever going to play them, right? And reality is you need those people to do that for the talented players to play, because the talented players, a lot of times they don't want to do all the dirty work. They actually want people to do these things, but you got to set it up that way where that it's being taught.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Tavi. I think everyone has a role to play, and remember, as coaches, part of our jobs is to put people in positions to be successful. So you got to know your players and know what what they're not necessarily what they're capable of, what their strengths are, and try to put them in those positions. Now, again, it's very different when you're talking about U10 kids, or if you're talking about university athletes or pros, right? At our level, you're playing your best players to win. Like that's, it's a little bit of a different focus. And so, but you're also, you build a team. So you're trying to make sure that whoever is on the floor is in a position where they can use their strengths and be successful. Everyone has a role to play, and that's just kind of part of the deal. But, at U10, I think you're developing, you're trying to aim, you're always developing, but everyone has to play in order to develop. It's a very different focus. So I think where you are matters in answering that question as well.
Charles, I want to build upon that, because I think that's probably the next level that you've gotten to is when you have pro players, who wants to do the roles, who wants to do them, and that's the biggest challenge from pro. What I see, it's like, well, everybody feels like they're the people that should be doing the scoring, right? And I'd like to think that the best professional teams somehow, some way can get the people who do the hard things well, like rolling, screening, and rebounding, and that kind of stuff, and integrating that with the team and actually rewarding that somehow, some way. That's the most successful teams. But I do understand that you bring a whole bunch of guys together and you tell them, hey, come play for my team. Here's X amount of dollars. Like, who wants to do this? And it's like, I'm not that guy, coach, because they're all good players. They're all, usually the better players on better teams. They've never really had those roles. how do you find that, right? I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I'm sure Sean, you could add to that. I mean, you played a lot of pro, like that whole game.
Yeah, and that it made me think about it actually, because I mean, as our team, we're trying to build, and we're student athletes perspective, but as a pro, I mean, everybody's really playing for that next contract, right? Most of the leagues, you're playing for that next contract. NBA, you're playing for the supermax, and I don't follow the salary a ton, but the best defensive player is Giannis, but the number 2 to number 10, those guys aren't getting 30 million a year because they're really good defenders, right? So there is that balance as a pro where you're trying to fit into the team goals, and I honestly struggle with that a lot. That's why I felt the most comfortable on the national team, because I know I didn't have to score. I could facilitate, I could rebound, I could defend. If I don't have to shoot, I don't have to shoot, fine. Now, at some point, maybe it hurt because I still turned down shots that I know I could make, but I just didn't shoot them. But, when you get to pro, there's some teams I played on in pro, and it was like, okay, if I go 0 for 5, I'm probably getting fired on Monday, right? Or I'm not getting a contract. Or if that starts to balloon up, man, does this team see my value as a team player, as a defender, as somebody who's going to work their butt off and play hard and listen to the coach? And so as a pro, that's like, man, Charles must have been really hard, because try to talk to a player. This is his livelihood. Like, guys I played with overseas, their families were staying at home and they were sending money home. So if he's not getting his 19 points a game, or even his 35 minutes a game, that's affecting his stat line, that's affecting his livelihood, and it's a whole new can of worms that you open up that adds a lot of stress to a team, and it's tough. I imagine Charles wouldn't want to be.
It's not fun, but you get to build it. You get to build it, so you are fitting those pieces in, and hopefully you're back to the communication piece. You're being honest about what your expectations are, and there's sort of some agreement about what's going to happen. Now, obviously, we know what happens when the ball gets thrown up and everything's live, but it's part of the deal, and it's an interesting part of this level, and that's why I say it's very different. That question has to be answered at every level.
The reality, though, is, and I always felt this way, is because I was on some bad teams, and like as a player, and obviously, we've had success as a coach, and the bad teams, man, it's like everybody's out for themselves, and it's bad. It's bad. Everybody feels they're doing their own, and that's trouble. And that's why I always felt like, one of my things was winning isn't everything, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And when I say that, it's if you're on a winning team and people are willing to sacrifice a little bit more, and they can see, okay, a role's good, and we're doing well, and we're okay with it, and the coach is okay with it, and the upper manager okay with it, and then you start losing. It's like everybody's out for themselves, right? So it's super important to try and build something that's successful and early, because if not, it really it's really hard to get out of that hole of that culture of losing.
I just for the sake of time, I really want to respect the time of our panelists and coaches here. We'll try and tackle the individual questions. If like the panelists want to stay a bit longer, to answer questions, that's it really depends on them, but I just really want to respect their time. So for now, we'll take 3 individual questions into consideration, because they could be addressed relatively quickly. But yeah, I just wanted to make note of that, because I'm aware it's 7:57.
And with that being said, I'll just speak on some of the, touch on the first individual question that was asked. And it was, how do you beat a very disciplined team? And this was kind of structured more towards Coach Taffy.
That question was for me, Taffy. No,
what kind of question is that?
It wasn't.
You asked that question?
No, this is.
I'm just joking.
No, these are questions.
Beat a disciplined team. Oh,
it's a good question. Answer the question.
Yeah. Answer that.
Oh shit. No, I mean, you got to be more disciplined than they are. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, that's the only answer I have. I mean, and I'd say discipline. Usually, you're pretty hardworking, and usually you establish roles, and everybody knows where they are on the team is in the pecking order. And it's tough if all those ducks are in a row, and then you have to play a team. It's really tough. So you literally got to match that. Match that, or have ridiculous talent. I guess that's the only other thing I'd say. Have ridiculous talent where it doesn't even matter. You're just jumping higher than them, and you can do whatever you want. So that's probably the two answers: either match it or get ridiculous talent that you can beat it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Assuming there's nobody else to kind of say anything, I'll just move on to the next individual question, which was for Coach Justin. So during your answer to question 2, you kind of alluded to some of like the things that you had to switch up during your tough stretch. So this question was asking like, what are examples of the things that you had to switch up during that tough stretch that you went through?
Yeah. Well, to put things in perspective, it was just that stretch last season when we had a bunch of injuries, and what I was mentioning, I was getting frustrated. I was basically, what I had to change is stop getting caught up in the end results so much, and regather my focus into more of the process and some of the I guess small wins. We were depleted, and I was having the same expectation I had before the season when I had everybody healthy. I kept the same expectation while we didn't have half of our players, and I think it was unfair to the guys because I was kind of in the mentality like, don't make any excuses. It does not matter. Nobody, like Coach Staffy said, nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Go out there and perform. And to be honest, we lost 5 in a row, and we almost won two out of 2 or 3 games where we were really close and very competitive. We were competing, like Coach Sean was mentioning, like we were competing the hell out of it, but the talent wasn't there, and we fell short a few times, and I was getting just caught up in the results without really embracing the fact that the guys were killing themselves out there. And playing guys like 40 minutes. They had no business playing 40 minutes, with all the respect I have for my guys, So I just had to the break allowed me to watch more tape and focus on the good stuff that we were doing, because I was totally oblivious to it. And then the energy I was giving out was just a bad negative energy. And, when things don't go well, there's no point of doing that. So again, stop feeling sorry, or almost feeling sorry for myself, quote unquote, that the expectation we had earlier in the season wasn't what we were doing, just because we had high hopes for the season, and at the end of the day, we actually did pretty well. So yeah, it was just again, honesty and looking at yourself and be accountable for how you're performing out there, and it really helped.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you. I hope that answered the question for whoever it might have been that did ask. But for the last personal question, I had PT, like, how did playing overseas help you become more adaptable as a coach?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't really think about playing overseas that much anymore, to be honest with you. I think more times I think about guys that I want to recruit, that want to play at a higher level than university. I can relate to those guys more now, right? Like the days of me playing, I just don't really think of that. But I do think about like, oh, okay, well, I had this plan carved out for myself back when I was in like the 6th or 7th grade. So now for myself, I'm just like, all right, I know what it took. I know everything that I did. So I'm just going to try to find or recruit players that actually want to get to the next level, and they're willing to pour in some work to try to get to the next level outside of university, but higher than university. and I'll just try to mentor them as much as possible, one-on-one, or within the team, to be able to attain that goal at some point in time post their university career. But that's as best as I can answer that question, to be honest. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I hope that that answered whoever's question that was that did ask that. I'm gonna pass back over to Kwesi so we can kind of push on with whatever it may be. Thank you guys for answering all those questions. But I'm gonna pass back on to the boss man. You feel me?
Thank you, Brandon. Like I said, I just really want to take the time to say thank you to you, the panelists, and thank you for everyone attending. You know, I know you could. I mean, if you all, like you panelists, need to go and head out, like I know I said, 6 to 8 and everything, so I definitely do not want to get in the way of your time. I know PT has some daycare duty a lot of times, so this might be cutting into that. So if y'all got to head out, by all means, I'll definitely keep it on if any panelists want to stay. But like I said, I'm just really grateful for everyone being here.
Thanks, man. We'll stay for a couple minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so if Brandon has some of the rest of the questions, then we could just keep answering them. But yeah.
Perfect. So I can just jump on and shoot out some more of the questions. Say, another question that was asked was, how much time do you actually spend teaching during a given season? And do you find yourself sometimes wishing athletes would receive more fundamental training before getting to the post-secondary level? And at what level do you think the focus should shift from fundamentals to X's and O's? This question is for all the coaches.
Sorry, I missed that, Brando. Can you ask that one more time? Sorry.
Sure. So how much time do you spend actually teaching during a given season? And do you find yourself sometimes wishing athletes would receive more fundamental training before getting to the post-secondary level? And at what level do you think the focus should shift from fundamentals to X's and O's?
Oh, I don't know. This is for myself, and I see Mike on here too. Mike, you should jump in here too, because you do have, like, this is a coach of the year as well. So I'd like Mike to actually jump in if you'd like, Mike. But I don't know. For me, I just do most of my teaching throughout the summer. I do a lot of my teaching in the preseason, and I mean, the teaching never stops. You're going to teach even during the middle of your season. But I do think that at some point in time, you've got to roll with the guys that can actually take all that teaching and translate it into game scenario or game situations. But you still constantly teach, man, at the level that I'm at. Charles is at a completely different level, and half them guys, you're either on it or you're not on it. But at the university level, I do think that you've got to teach right through the entire. I don't think there's a day that doesn't go by where you're not teaching, whether it's preseason, middle of the season, end of the season, postseason, or off season. So that's just for me.
I'll just say super quick, just one thing that you touched on, like we teach, but film does a lot of teaching too, right? So here where you're managing people's bodies, and Pat, like the G League, people you're managing bodies, there's so much more. It's not just, Monday to Friday practice and play, on the weekends. Like, there's days off. The load management that everyone's heard about is a relatively real thing. And so film does a lot of your teaching because you can't be on court all the time. And so that's one other way that you're teaching. So it just looks different at times.
Also, I think it's a good point. I mean, we do a lot of that. I do think, though, I think when I looked at the question, I think Jason sent it. I think if you asked me the difference between guys and girls, I mean, the girls, you're doing a lot more teaching, and I think that's important in terms of skill development, which is super important, and it has to be done, and it has to be done to get to where you need to get to in the winter. That's for sure. And a lot of times you have to put yourself in a position. Hopefully you can do it in the summer so that you don't have to do so much, because really after that it's going to be more X's and O's towards the end of the year. And maybe it's maybe it's not a year. Maybe you have a 3-year plan instead of maybe you need to do it over 3 years. Maybe it's not 1 year you can do it. So you have to have more of a greater plan. But I feel like, guys, there's so many more people now that are skills trainers, right? There's so many skills trainers now. People, everybody's got all their things, and they go see this guy, and they go see that guy, and it's I won't say it's almost done for you, but at those levels, it's like, yeah, it's less of that, and then but so less of that, and you're more teaching more fundamentals, skills than fundamentals, and then X and O's, it usually happens during the year, but I'd say more fundamentals maybe in the off season, and the skills. Now we're glorified skills guys now, because now we have no season, so we've basically now our skills guys. To be perfectly honest, our skill player development roles is really stepped up here. So, but usually not as big a concern. I don't know what you guys feel about that.
I'll leave you with one last thing too, is like they don't all have to be separate. I think like that's one thing. They're not all, in my mind anyway, they're not all separate. So if you're working on your plays, for example, you could be breaking them down and working on the skills that'll be used to execute those actions, right? So it's not necessarily like, two completely different things. I really don't look at it that way. I think you can incorporate your player development in the progressions of your X's and O's, right? Like I think we have to almost get away from like, trainers and coaches. Like, Taffy, for example, is really good at skill development. That's part of his coaching job. Like it's not a separate thing. Sean is amazing at developing players. That's part of his coaching. It's not like a separate thing that comes with his job. It's a part of his job. And I think we should almost get away from looking at them as two different things, because that's a part of what you do as a coach.
Point.
I think I would add into it the skills. I think we all see as coaches that skills are better and better and improving. But I think learning when to use them is like the teaching part that, I try and spend the most time on. Obviously, I think we do spend a lot of time on skill set and working, but when do you use it? Because a lot of players don't know when to use everything that they're actually working on. So they can do all kinds of crazy things, but, most of them don't really matter in the game. It's when are you supposed to use each skill that you're actually developing? So I think that's one thing I would just add in terms of skill development stuff.
What else you got, Brandon?
Okay. So this next question here is, coaches, for any university students who may be aspiring to one day potentially be a coach at a high level, what advice would you give them?
I think I already hit on that. You got to coach. You got to do it at younger levels. There's lots of times that you can do this. Sometimes in a year you can coach 2-3 teams in a year if you're really, really hustling. And it's not. The good news about coaching is that you get better as a coach with more time. And what I would also say is, it's not necessarily you have to coach one team at a time too. You can coach 2-3 teams at a time if you're really doing it. So you can even exponentially do it more if you really wanted to. So I would say any university guy aspiring, it's like, yeah, you know what? Look within your local community. There's piles of opportunities there that, always looking for people that are willing to help and willing to be selfless, as Patrick said. Like, you got to be selfless. It's like, if you're looking like, oh, why am I coaching these kids? I'm way better coach, and I want to be like, okay, well then you're already in trouble, right? So, but there's lots of opportunities.
Definitely agree with Coach Taffy here. When I was an assistant at Ottawa U, I coached U15, U19, obviously Ottawa U. I had my Sunday morning training, and then I was doing the junior academy, and I was doing the Team Ontario at the same time. One thing that I think is Masai who said that is like looking for people who are more passionate than ambitious. Obviously, you need to have ambition, but if ambitious is you're more ambitious and passionate, then it's not really gonna work. A lot of times you get reached out by guys that are like, oh, how much money are you gonna pay me? I want to be on your staff. I'm like, well, we don't really have that money like that. And if that's one of the first questions you ask as a coach is how much you're going to get paid, is you're in the wrong, like, Coach Steffi said that, you're on the wrong line of duty. You got to pay your dues and you got to be passionate. And eventually your ambition is you're going to take you to, and your passion with your ambition is going to take you to some good gigs and some good opportunities. But you can't, you can't fast forward. Definitely not.
Let's hammer through these questions.
I think. Sorry. Okay, so which team or player was the toughest for you guys to game plan for, and was it Carleton?
I'll take a little bit of that, but obviously they're the best team. They've won a lot, but I don't think they're necessarily hard to game plan for. I think you kind of know what they're going to do, and are you going to be able to beat them at what they do, or what you do? Is what you do better than what they do? Are you going to be able to stop them and kind of impose your will into the game? So I don't think they're necessarily hard to game plan for, but they're impossible to beat for us. We haven't beat them yet. But yeah, I try to think that it's not because our game plans weren't very good. But
don't worry, Sean, you come get me. Don't worry, you'll get me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's not Carleton. I don't know who it is, but it's not Carleton.
No. I think sometimes it's hard to game plan people who just do random stuff, to be honest with you. It's like, oh my God, just random. What's going on? Like, it's tough. It's tough to see when people just do stuff that, like I know when I was coaching women's basketball, I know that was one thing that, and now looking back on it, it was the randomness was very difficult to defend. It just was, it was just super difficult, and you couldn't script what was going to happen. And when you couldn't script what was going to happen defensively, it made it really tough.
I totally agree. Game planning is one thing. It doesn't mean, but you can game plan and you just face a team who just better than you. And in terms of the player's execution is the other thing. But I agree with Coach Steffi. Is when you have a team that does a lot of different things, very unpredictable. Maybe they're not as talented, but they're a little bit harder to game plan for. Doesn't mean that they are tougher to beat or not. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think the game plan thing is one aspect of it. But then when it comes to the on the floor, you can game plan all you want against Carleton. You think you have a great game plan, but they're so good, they're still going to give you the business, right? So it is what it is. And then there's other teams, you scratch your head, you're thinking about what game plan you're gonna do, and then or if you just go out there and play basketball, to be honest, and then you end up sometimes do better, right? So again, I think there are two different things. So
I do want to build upon that, because there is one thing I would say is that what we don't do as coaches is we don't look at our own. We spend so much time worrying about the other team, we don't worry about our own team enough. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I would say is that there's so much within your own team that you could be doing better. And I do always focus on that. I know for myself, especially when it came to referees, they used to drive me nuts, and I used to get way too wrapped up into it. And at one point I'm like, there's enough stuff that I should be seeing for my own team before I worry about what the refs are doing. And you got to really find a balance to that, but you definitely have to find a balance to your own team. You have to, there's so much there that you and it's tough, especially when you're playing 2 games a week, but what's your team doing? Look at your own team. And if you see your own team, you're like, whoa, we're not even handling our own business. Why do we worry about the other team? And sometimes we got to balance that out better.
Would any other coaches like to speak on the question? If not, I can move on to the next one. All right, I'll take that as move on to the next one. So the next one, we only have 4 left, by the way, but what are a few ways that you generate/create a winning culture on your team? And what does culture mean to you? How are you generating leadership in your culture through practice on a daily basis? Yeah, I know you guys don't want to give out the secret sauce. That's why everyone's hesitating.
No, I think
Yeah.
that's secret sauce. I don't think it's secret. I think the answer is how do you get people to do it? Like there's no secret to that. That's hard. I think everybody knows the answers. I think it's tough. It's the balance between. I think the biggest thing is don't figure out don't empower the right people on your team. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Sometimes we empower the wrong people on your team, the people that are not about what you want it to be, how you want your culture to be. And when I say that, it's like, a lot of times, and I've totally made this mistake in the past. It's like, oh, my best player is going to be the guys that set the culture right, and often that's not the case. Often that's actually the wrong thing, and you got to be careful, because if you do it that way and you don't pay attention to that, you're going to be in trouble. So I'd say a lot of times coaches make that mistake. They empower the wrong person, right? They power the wrong person, and you got to empower the right person. If you empower the right person, then or maybe that person may be part of that leadership, but you need to kind of lessen that a little bit. I think that's important. And in culture, I mean, whatever you believe in terms of how you think things should go. There's if you want a culture of family, some people want that. Some people want a culture of winning. Some people want that. Understand what you want and who you are as a person too. I think that's important too. As a coach, you need to who you are as a person. Maybe winning's not as important to you. So if it's not that important to you, then be yourself. Be what's important to you to be, and empower that within whatever your culture you want it to be. But I do really think that we empower the wrong people.
Coach Sean, would you like to touch on the question at all? If not, then
It's similar to what he said. I agree with that completely. Right? We empower the wrong people sometimes, and I think you just got to set some standards that that you're willing to accept, and you're pushing everyone to do, and you got to make sure that your team every year knows them, and that it's them, kind of making sure that we're all on the same page and we're all driving towards that same common goal. So yeah, I think it would just be making sure that we're empowering them to be leaders themselves, and just giving them kind of the standards of what's acceptable to build that winning culture.
For sure. Yeah, so I think right there we're just gonna finish it on that question, to be honest. Just being like kind to the panelists' time, and just given that we've been on for about 2 hours and 30 minutes. I just want to say thank you for everyone that came out. Thank you to Kwesi for even putting this on. And I know he goes through a lot of the hardships of just putting everything together and reaching out and getting everything in order for game day, if you want to call it that, as today. I want to say thank you for the panelists. We're only down to 2 of them now, but still very, very great people, and very thankful to just gain so much of the knowledge from the questions that we asked and a lot of the topics that we discussed. Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for everyone that came out.